You know, folks, one of the questions I've been reading about on certain websites on the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, mostly the comic book, the question is, and you can see it up there, is who is worst? Who is the worst writer? Basically, they're asking the question, Ian Flynn or Ken Penders, who was worst? Basically, who was the worst writer? Who was or is? Basically, this question appeared, ironically enough, after this whole revealing of what would happen to Sally in Genesis. Basically, because of what Ian Flynn has decided to do, a lot of fans feel as though he has become one of the most controversial, if not one of the worst writers in comic book history. Now, it has been said time and time again that sometimes a comic book writer, when you're hired on to be the head comic book writer, that is, it's been repeated time and time again that the head comic book writer cannot show favoritism that much to the fans. Even though there have been some head writers of other medias like cartoons, movies, and graphic novels and stuff like that have indeed shown favoritism and fan service to the fans. But the thing is, what people are wondering because of what has happened is who takes the cake here? Who takes the cake and has the icing put on top of it? Now, some people have said that Ken Penders, some have said that Ken was a great writer when he first started. But as he started getting towards the end of his run, he started to not be so great. Some people credit him for creating and writing one of the most talked about, and as some people have put it, overrated in some people's eyes, if not classic, endgame story arc. Some people have praised him for that. Some people have discredited him for that. Some have downright hated him for that. Some have said that there are a variety of plot holes left in Endgame that he did not address. In fact, one person called Dr. X over at the Saturday Morning Sonic forums lists 14 plot holes that should have been addressed. Now, there are some people that do agree Endgame could be rewritten, but could it? We don't know. But even after that, Ken had done some variety of stories that people liked and some people didn't. There was a few stories that he really took an interest in and to me did a decent job and made them as epic as he could. I remember when he did the Sonic Adventure story adaptation, and that just didn't span from issues like 78 all the way up to issue 84 or 85. But it also included a continuation, if you will, in a 48-page super special. It shows you that even though some people have the different opinions about Ken Penders during his last run with the comic, that some people will agree he did a decent job. And that he paid a lot of detail to how big and epic certain games were that he would adapt from. He would adapt into the comic books. And Sonic Adventure is no exception. Now, some people have their indifference of opinions when it comes to 75. I mean, people like the suspense that it was building towards. I mean, this was actually being built towards during the Sonic World Tour, believe it or not. The World Tour, and even, I think, in a few Knuckle issues, Knuckle the Echidna issues, it was being built towards. And what was being built towards it? Well, the return, similarly, at first we thought the return of Dr. Robotnik, but as we found out, but actually we found out it was the return of Robo-Robotnik / debut of Dr. Eggman. Now, a lot of people will credit Ken for actually doing a good build-up there, because every issue leading up to it, we would see these satellites, coming together, and we would see these fingers pressing these buttons and wondering what's going on. And also the fact that anytime these satellites got activated, certain activity, seismic activity or whatever, would occur. Now again, people have credited Ken for doing that kind of stuff. But as time went on, he kind of started to decline a little bit. Issue 100 was kind of left a lot to be desired. Ian does get credit for the later 80 issues, if you will, like I think 87, 88 issue, between those issues, for trying to, I guess, bring some realism to the comic by having the kids finally go to school. Which I will credit to him was probably an okay idea. Not one of the best ideas, but it was okay. Even though it didn't last too long. It was referenced later on in a backup story with Tails and Amy. But still, he tried to go in that direction as well. Now, like I said, issue 100, in the eyes of some, left much to be desired, as well as issue 150. But issue 125 was what many felt was pretty good, especially the build-up. Here you had the build-up to Sonic and Sally being back together by issue 123. And then what many felt was the biggest mistake that Ken could have made, even if you were a Sonic and Sally fan and you supported the pairing, was when Ken had them get engaged, if you will. That was the biggest mistake you could have made. If you're a head writer, knowing that the mandate by a certain corporate company states that the franchise hero, no matter what media that hero is represented in, cannot be tied down. Now, again, he did some good work. He did some good work with, the aftermath of 125. The home story arc was pretty well done. I liked it. Dark, stuff like that. It was all pretty good. The home arc was pretty good. But then we get to around the 130 issues, and some people felt that when we got to the 130 issues, this is when he started to really decline. Like I said, 150 wasn't very well done. Many felt it didn't have the milestone issue feel to it. It was just like a regular issue. But they all felt he was slowly declining in his writing, especially with 134 when he and Carl Bowlers together decided to do the infamous slap situation in 134. Then really, he just started to really decline a lot, according to many. One of the positives some fans may or may not agree on, in my opinion, that he did, was he gave Sonic a steady GF, if you will, girlfriend, if you will, in Fiona, even though that kind of started some tension between Sonic and Tails. And, but again, like I said, his thing just started really declining. And in his last story, not many people received that very well, because we all saw apparently that the Antoine that was, I'll give Ken credit. I'll give him credit. The Antoine that we saw at first when Sonic came back from space, we all thought it was Antoine. We all thought things had changed. But then you started to get clues around that maybe this wasn't the real deal. And then it wasn't until his last story that was published, the wedding, the so-called false wedding that Sally had to endure, was taking place. And not only then do you find out, oh, this Antron was the evil Antron the whole time. Now, if you're a long-time fan, you probably much figured that out. But one of the things some people have complained about with Ken is that Ken turned Sonic into a playboy by having him date and associate with all these different girls. But you got to give him credit because he did try to give him a steady girlfriend in Fiona. Kind of a change of pace, if you will. But then we come to Ian Flynn. Ian Flynn comes in and everybody's happy about it because here's an actual fan that was on the side of the fan base that knows what the fans liked, knows what the fans wanted. Starts out well with Birthday Bash, starts out well with Darkest Storm, but then later on really starts to kind of decline a little bit. Starts to do things fans don't want to see, like destroying Knothole. Destroying Knothole. Let's see, what else? You know, causing the fight between Tails and Sonic, and then adding in the dialogue for Tails that the reason Tails had all this pent-up frustration was due to Sonic dating Fiona. And then speaking of Fiona, having Fiona turn on everybody for no reason. I mean, yeah, there were hints thrown here and there, but still a lot of fans felt it was, some fans felt it was not really necessary. It was out of the blue. And then you get 200, which some fans felt was okay, no problem. It was all right. But then you get later on, you get, you know, into later issues, and you get the whole Iron Dominion thing that ran for about a year, and fans didn't really like it. Fans were kind of torn in between about it. Some did, some didn't. But I could tell you, I think the majority didn't. I think the fan base was kind of more of a majority of not liking it because they felt it was too long, wasn't really necessary. But in the eyes of some, it was necessary to give Sonic and the Freedom Fighters a new adversary, a new villain. But even still, and then what he did by spinning it off to Journey to the East in the Sonic Universe comic, which I guess was okay. But then using it as well to kind of tease a relationship between Monkey Kong and Sally, and possibly Amy and Sonic, which never materialized. And then after that all takes place, you get Sonic. You build up with a few short stories here and there to eventually get Sonic and Sally back together. And then what happens? He breaks them off, according to many fans, with the whole situation of 225. And then he takes us into this whole Genesis deal, which many fans felt was unnecessary, wasn't that well done, really didn't have much to do. It felt like all you had to do was read 225 and then go right to 230. And then you read 230, and then what he does at the end of that, and then in future issues, it's like many fans are like, you know, this guy's really starting to lose his flavor. It's like he's a very popular ice cream flavor, but he's becoming unpopular because you're always having the same ice cream flavor every day. He's losing his flavor. And he's becoming stale and rotten and stuff like that. Many say that he does a great work, does better jobs when he does Sonic Universe, but that's about it. Some say he does better with Sonic Universe, maybe even Mega Man, but that's about it. So the question is out there, who is the worst writer on the comics? Is it Ian or is it Ken? Let me know what you think. Let me know who you believe is the worst writer, or who's the better writer, and who's the worst writer, whatever, and I'll talk to y'all later.